Okay, so in this lesson we're going to talk about the relationship between the slope and y-intercept of a line and its equation. So we're going to look at the equation, and from that equation you will be able to determine the slope and y-intercept, and also given the slope and y-intercept you will be able to determine the equation. But before you can do that, you need to understand that relationship. All right, so let's kind of learn about that relationship first, and then you'll be able to do some problems dealing with that. So remember, in a previous lesson, you were asked to graph an equation of a line, and you were asked to do that using a t-table where you had to find some points. Remember that? Okay. Now, we also talked about the fact if that coefficient in front of x is a fraction, if that coefficient right here is a fraction, you want to choose numbers of x so that way you can get integers for y. So you want the x coordinates and the y coordinates to be integers, so that way you don't have to estimate. Now you don't have to, but that's the way we did it. So if I want both the x coordinate and the y coordinate to be integers, then I need to choose values of x, remember, that are divisible by the denominator. So if you think about numbers that are divisible by 3, you have 0, positive 3, negative 3, positive 6, negative 6, positive 9, negative 9, and so on, right? So let's let x be 3 for right now. So if x is 3, I want to remind you this, you get y equals, so we're trying to find that y coordinate. So you get y equals negative 2/3 times 3 plus 4. Negative 2/3 times 3, the 3's divide out, so you get negative 2 plus 4, which is 2, right? So I get the point 3, 2. So when I plot that point 3, 2, I get this. So there's that first point. So there's one of my solutions. So remember, when you graph a line, you're actually graphing those solutions. All these are solutions to that line. So there are an infinite number of solutions. If I choose, let's say, negative 3, if I choose negative 3 instead, let's see what we get. We get y equals negative 2/3 times negative 3 plus 4. So the 3 into 3 is 1. 3 into negative 3 is negative 1. A negative 2 times a negative 1 is a positive 2. And 2 plus 4 is 6. So when x is negative 3, my y coordinate is 6. So there's another solution. So negative 3, 6, right? So negative 3, 6 is about here. Okay? And when we did this, you were asked to use 3 points, but I'm just going to use 2 right here. Okay, so now I'm going to draw the line, and when I draw the line, I have this. Okay? So I have this right here. Okay, so there's a line. Now, from a previous lesson, I want you to remember this. From a previous lesson, do you see that that line is falling, right? That line is falling. So since the line is falling, what do you remember the slope should be? Should the slope be positive, negative, 0, or no slope? Which one is it? The line is falling, so which one is it? The slope should be negative, right? So the slope should be negative since the line is falling, right? Okay, so we learned that in the previous lesson. Now I want to go ahead and label this point here. So this point here is 3, 2. So that's 3, 2. Okay? And what I want to do now, listen carefully, what I want to do now is find the slope of that line that contains those 2 points. So from the previous lesson, we know how to do that. We're going to use a slope formula. So the slope formula, remember, is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, right? And so let's call this right here x1, and this will be y1. Remember how we did this? And then this will be x2, y2. So let's find that slope. So the slope is y2 subtract y1, and remember the order matters. When you subtract, if you put y2 in the numerator, you need to put x2 in the denominator. Because remember, subtraction is not commutative. The order does matter. So 2 subtract 6 divided by, since the 2 here came from that y2, then I got to put 3 first in the denominator. So 3 subtract a negative 3. So 2 subtract 6 is a negative 4. 3 subtract a negative 3, remember that means 3 plus 3, right? So I get negative 4 divided by 6, reduce, always reduce, so your slope is negative 2/3. So there's my slope, negative 2/3. So the slope of this line is negative 2/3. Now I want you to, remember the idea was that relationship, right? Okay, so I want you to look at this number here and then look at your equation. Negative 2/3. Negative 2/3 is that coefficient in it. Okay, so keep that in mind now. Now, remember the y-intercept, from a previous lesson, we know that the y-intercept is where the graph crosses or goes through or intersects the y-axis, right? Y-axis. So in this case, do you see that the graph crosses the y-axis at this point right here? This is your y-intercept. So my y-intercept has what y value? Well, that y value is 4, right? Your y-intercept is 4. Do you see a 4 here? You sure do. It's right there. And so now that brings us to this idea that we need to know about. This brings us to the terms slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. So an equation of a line is in slope-intercept form if it looks like this: y equals mx plus b. So you're going to see this a lot. Y equals mx plus b. So whenever you get y by itself, like we had here, y was by itself, that coefficient of x is the slope, and that constant is your y-intercept. Always your y-intercept, where the graph crosses the y-axis. This is your slope, this is your y-intercept. Okay, so this right here, so negative 2/3 is your slope. We found that using a formula, so we know that now. And we also know that this constant, that positive 4 that you see, is actually the y-intercept. That's why the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, all right, so let's look at this example. All right, now that you know the relationship, between the equation of a line and the slope and the y-intercept, let's look at this. So example number 1. So this is number 1. Y equals 4x minus 7. Y equals 4x minus 7. Determine the slope and the y-intercept of this line. So determine the slope and the y-intercept of this line. All right, so since y is by itself, the slope is a coefficient of x. Well, the coefficient of x here is 4. So you're going to say the slope, so the answer, you're going to say slope is 4. And for y-intercept, you can use the letter b. B for y-intercept. And b equals, and b in this case, make sure you keep the sign. Don't say 7. This is a negative 7. So the slope is a negative 7. That's where the graph crosses the y-axis. The y-intercept, if you said 7, you're saying the graph crosses the y-axis at 7. It doesn't. It's negative 7. All right, so that's important. Okay, now let's suppose we had this, number 2. So let's go ahead and do this. So determine the slope and y-intercept of each line. So determine the slope and y-intercept of each line. So here's number 2. Number 2, let's suppose we had y equals 4/5 x plus 2. 4/5 x plus 2. So y is by itself, right? So it's already in that slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. Y is by itself. So y equals mx plus b. Slope-intercept form. That's slope-intercept form. So your slope is a coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x is 4/5, and your y-intercept is positive 2. So there's your answer. So So that's the answer. Okay. Number 3, suppose we had 2x plus y equal 5. 2x plus y equal 5. Now be careful. So if you want to find the slope in the y-intercept, what must you do first? Well, you must first write this in slope-intercept form. So first write in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So let's get y by itself. So here's the work. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. So you can subtract 2x from both sides, right? And then the 2x's, the variable terms add up to be 0. So 2x minus 2x is 0. So you get y equals negative 2x plus 5. So now you have it in slope-intercept form, right? And so therefore the answer, you're going to say the slope is, what's the coefficient of x? What are you multiplying x by? I'm multiplying x by negative 2. And the y-intercept is positive 5. Now I'm going to say this, a mistake people make is this. And be careful, because it's not, if you do this, you're going to lose some points. Mistake people make is they say the slope is negative 2x. That's not true. That is not true. The slope is not negative 2x. The slope is the coefficient of x. So whatever you multiply an x by, so you must say negative 2. Do not say negative 2x. Okay? All right. So that is shown quite often. This error is made. All right. So let's look at number 4. So in number 4, let's suppose we had this in number 4. So number 4, we have negative 3x plus 5y equal 7. Negative 3x plus 5y equals 7. So I want to find the slope and the y-intercept. The slope and the y-intercept. So to find the slope and the y-intercept, I want to make this look like y equals mx plus b. Slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. So I must get y by itself. So let's go ahead and isolate the 5y. So here's your work. So I know I'm going to add 3x to both sides because it's a negative 3x, right? Let me go ahead and write it over. So you know you're going to add 3x to both sides, just like this. And when you combine like terms, this is 0. So you get 5y equal, and let's put the variable term first. So you get 3x plus 7. And then you're going to get y by itself. I'm just rewriting this over. You can divide both sides by 5, right? What you do one side, you do the other. So now you have y by itself equals, now let's put this as two fractions. 3/5 x, 3/5 x plus 7/5. So now you have it in slope-intercept form. So this is your slope, right? I'm going to go ahead and write it over. All right, so this is your slope, and this is your y-intercept. So the y-intercept is a positive 7/5. So the answer, you're going to say the slope is 3/5, and the y-intercept, where the graph crosses the y-axis, will be a positive 7/5. Okay? All right, let's look at number 5. So number 5, let's suppose we had negative, well, let's do 2x minus 4y equal, and let's say 10. Let's say we had 10. Let's make it negative 10. Negative 10. So 2x minus 4y equals a negative 10. Okay? So we got to get y by itself. So I want to put this in slope-intercept form. So I want to transform this into slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. So I can get y by itself. Okay, so to get y by itself, so here's your work. So let me go ahead and write this over. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, just like this, right? So 2x subtract 2x is 0. So 0 to negative 4y is a negative 4y equal, and let's put the variable term first, so negative 2x minus 10, right? Then we're going to divide both sides by negative 4, just like this, just like this. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1. 1 times y is y. That's what you wanted, right? Okay, now be careful. So let's go ahead and rewrite this as two separate fractions first. So this one's a little bit more challenging than this one was. This one was easy to write. 3/5 x plus 7/5. All right, so let's be careful with this one. negative 2 divided by negative 4x minus 10 divided by negative 4, right? Negative 2 divided by negative 4x minus 10 divided by negative 4. Now be careful. A negative divided by negative is a positive, and when I reduce, 2/4 is 1/2 x. A negative divided by negative is a positive, and 10 divided by 4 reduced is 5/2. So my answer, the slope of this line here will be 1/2, and the y-intercept will be a positive 5/2. All right, so positive 5/2. So there's your answer. Okay, now remember though, so just remember though, the y-intercept can be negative. It looks like the most of the problems the y-intercept was positive. I want to make a point. So your y-intercept, you got to make sure you keep that sign. So the y-intercept's -7. Here was a positive 2. Here it's a positive 7/5, and here it's a positive 5/2. But if this was negative, it would be a negative 5/2, right? So be careful. Be careful. Okay, so it's very simple. Very simple. Given the equation of a line, it is very simple to find the slope. So if it's not already in slope-intercept form, you need to write it in slope-intercept form. So you got to get y by itself. Once you get y by itself, the slope is a coefficient of x, and your y-intercept is your constant. All right, now let's look at this problem now. All right, so this is going to be number 6. The direction is going to be different. The directions will be different now. Okay, so now here's the directions. So we're still using the fact. We are still using this fact right here. The relationship between the slope and y-intercept of a line and its equation. So we know that in the equation where y equals mx plus b, where you get y by itself, the slope is a coefficient of x, and your y-intercept is this constant. Okay? So that's the relationship between the equation of a line and the slope and y-intercept. All right, so that's what we're using. We're using that fact in all these problems. Now the directions here is now different than this one. So this one says find the equation of a line, and you want to write that line in slope-intercept form with the given slope and y-intercept. So here's number 1 for this set of directions. So suppose that the slope is 5, and the y-intercept is 3. So the slope is 5 and the y-intercept is 3. Okay? So you want to write the equation of that line. So you want an equation with x and y in it. All right? And you want that equation in slope-intercept form. So meaning that slope-intercept form, so here's your work. So slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, right? Okay, so if you're going to write the equation of this line with this information, with these conditions, here's what you want it to look like. Okay, so remember, the coefficient of x is your slope, and the constant is your y-intercept. Well, that's what you're given. You're given the slope is 5. So the fact that you're told the slope is 5 means this. Means that m equals 5, right? The fact that the y-intercept is 3 means this. Means b equals 3. And all you do is take this value of m, plug into your formula, into the equation of the line in slope-intercept form, and do the same thing with b. So the answer, very simple. Watch. The answer is y equals m, which is 5, times x, plus b, which is 3. There's your answer. So the equation of that line is this. Y, so you have an equation with variables in it. Y equals mx plus b. So your slope is 5, that's what you're told, and your y-intercept is 3, a positive 3. So you see a positive 3 there. Okay? Number 2. This time, let's say the slope is negative 6, and the y-intercept is, let's say, 7. Okay? So the slope is -6 and the y-intercept is 7. So you want the equation to be in slope-intercept form. So in order to write the equation in slope-intercept form, you have to know the slope and the y-intercept, right? So I do know the slope, so that means m is -6. So here's your work. So m is -6, and the y-intercept, that's b. B is 7. So now we're going to substitute into this formula. So the formula, remember, is y equals mx plus b. So the answer, you're going to say y equals m, -6 times x plus 7. There's your answer. All right, number 3. Let's suppose this time that the slope is 2/7 and the y-intercept is -8. So the slope is 2/7 and the y-intercept is -8. Not difficult at all, right? So you know what to do. So if you want to write the equation in slope-intercept form, which is this, y equals mx plus b, in order to write it in that form, you need to know the slope and you need to know the y-intercept. So the slope and the y-intercept, and you do. Slope is 2/7, y-intercept's -8. So the answer is y equals 2/7 x, because that's your slope, right? So it's 2/7 x, and the y-intercept's -8, so you can say -8. There's your answer. So y equals 2/7 x minus 8. There's the answer. All right, and then let's do one more, number 4. Suppose this time the slope is, let's say, -3/8, and the y-intercept is -4/5. Okay? So the slope is -3/8 and the y-intercept's -4/5. So if you know the slope and you know the y-intercept, notice in all these problems you were told the y-intercept, right? So that means b. You're given b. So since you're told the y-intercept, so the work, you're told m is -3/8 and b is -4/5. So it's just a matter of you substituting the formula. So the answer, you're going to say y equals -3/8 x, slope times x, plus b, and that's -4/5. So write it as -4/5. And that's it. There's your answer. All right, so it's not difficult, right? So it's very easy to find the equation of a line in slope-intercept form if you're given the slope and y-intercept, because the slope will be what you're going to multiply x by, and the y-intercept, that's already b. So that's your constant. And that's all that is. All right? So that is the lesson on the relationship between the slope and y-intercept of a line and its equation.